Denise Gwen, reading aloud for you from my novel, His Christmas Eve Proposal, Book 3 of The Medicine Women of Alaska, Chapter 32. "Okay," a soft voice said. "What's up?" Drew jumped and cursed. "Naomi, don't sneak up on me like that." She thrust her hands on her hips and gazed at him smilingly. "I did not sneak up on you, Drew. I was in the kitchen getting breakfast ready. I thought you'd left." Despite his embarrassment, despite his shock, he was really glad to see her. She looked so darn cute, standing there in one of his ratty t-shirts, a pair of his pajamas bottoms that hung from her slender hips, and with an apron over her neck and cinched at the waist. Who'd ha thunk? She found an apron. He didn't even know he had one. She looked wistfully at him. Truth be told, I was planning to leave, but then I realized that the taxi service probably wasn't up and running at 7 a.m. So I decided I'd stay a while and fix breakfast. She winked at him. "Provided, of course, you're okay with that." "Of course I'm okay with that," he said, and scrubbed his hands through his hair. He inhaled at the acrid odor emanating from his body. "But man, do I need to take a shower first." "First, why don't you eat your breakfast before it gets cold?" He goggled at her. "What?" "Hold on," she said, disappearing. She returned a moment later, bearing a tray filled with a coffee pot and 2 steaming bowls. Oatmeal, if he wasn't very much mistaken. "Sit here," he said, scooting over and making room for her on the bedspread. She set the tray down between them. "Wow, I didn't even know I had a tray." "In one of your back cupboards," she said. "Eat up." He did. The oatmeal was delicious. "Someone's hungry," she noted as he inhaled his oatmeal and dropped the spoon into the empty bowl with a satisfied sigh. "You want some more?" "No, I'm good. I need to shower and get out of here. Paul's stuck in Anchorage. He followed Ricardo Velasquez to Anchorage Memorial, and now he needs a ride back home." "Oh, you remember that man, Ricardo Velasquez? He's the guy we pulled out from under that boulder and you inserted his chest tube, remember?" Yes," she said, her features turning white. "Yeah, his uncle's the fat cat developer behind this huge hotel and spa that's coming in. And he's also the son of Dr. Hermano Velasquez, the famous cardiothoracic surgeon." As he spoke, he noticed the blood draining from her face. She looked like a ghost, she'd turned so pale. Instead of speaking or looking at him, she cleaned up the detritus of their breakfast and lifted the tray and carried it with her to the doorway where she turned around. "I guess you'd better get yourself washed up and off to Anchorage then," she said. "What's the matter?" "What?" she asked, holding the tray close to her as if it offered her protection. "What's making you so nervous when I mentioned the Velasquez family?" "Oh, she stammered, and she turned on her heel and returned to the kitchen, still bearing the tray. He followed her as she set it down on the counter and wrapped her arms around her waist. He approached, but didn't touch her. "Naomi, you get really worked up and upset whenever someone mentions the Velasquez name. What's going on?" Another thought darted into his head. And besides all that, Dr. Hermano Velasquez apparently was pretty upset when he found out that you'd operated on his son. "I know you're a fine surgeon and would be good handling anybody, but why would he get that upset about you operating on his son?" Oh, she said, anger dripping in her voice. He's got a lot of nerve getting mad at me for that. Why was he out of line for questioning why you performed that procedure on his son? He stepped closer. With every step he took toward her, a wave of longing washed over him. Oh, why was this so hard? Why are you taking this stance with me? She flung at him. How dare you question my judgment? But I'm a doctor, Naomi, just like you, and we have the Hippocratic oath to preserve the sanctity of life with all our patients. First, do no harm. How dare you question me? Her anger, her vehemence, and her underlying terror frightened him. She was hiding something from him, yet all he wanted was to take her in his arms and hug her, promise her that everything would be okay. But he wasn't so sure about that because he didn't know if she'd committed a medical licensing issue. And if she had, he wanted to help her through it. He'd help her through anything, but he simply had to know what she'd done, and why was she so terrified of telling him the truth? She bowed her head and started sobbing. Naomi, he said, stepping forward quickly and putting his right hand on her shoulder. Sweetheart, what's wrong? She shook her head, maintained her stiff posture, rigid as a poker. Naomi, honey, he said, and he thought he'd managed to persuade her to release her tension and let him hold her when he said, Tell me what's wrong. You can't possibly understand, she flared at him, her eyes filled with tears. You wouldn't understand. He gazed steadily at her. I think I would. I've experienced more than my own fair share of heartache. Oh, really? She said, her tears suddenly forgotten. Did your heartache make the front page of the Los Angeles papers? Did your name get bandied about on every tabloid magazine in the country? Did your heartache include being humiliated by the press? Uh, no, what? Oh, and don't forget the fact that I froze during a routine surgery because I'd been partying all the time with Ricardo Velasquez as his fiancée and attending all these gala events. And because of my mistake, I caused an innocent man to die under my hands, Drew. Top that, will you? Hey, hold on. I was engaged to Ricardo Velasquez. I met him through Dr. Hermano Velasquez, my mentor, and the top surgeon at Los Angeles County Hospital. And because I was so captivated and enthralled by Ricardo, I stopped paying attention to what mattered to my practice. Because of that, I caused a man to die, and the press wouldn't let up after that. They camped out on the front sidewalk of the penthouse I lived in with Ricardo. Patients were leaving my practice in droves, and all the other doctors at the hospital were freezing me out because, after all, who'd work with me anymore when I was such a glorious mess of a doctor? Naomi, when Ricardo Velasquez slid that ring on my finger, I let it all go to my head. When the patient died, it was devastating. Hermano walked away from me, distanced himself, and that hurt more than anything because I was his best surgeon. Her face changed. Correction. I'd been his best surgeon. Oh, Naomi. And the pressure got so bad that I realized I didn't want to take it anymore, so I ran away. I ran away from the altar. I ran away to the furthest reaches of the country to escape it all. And damned if the whole Velasquez family didn't chase me out here. And besides all that, Drew, I didn't deserve to be happy anymore. I betrayed Dr. Velasquez and I betrayed Ricardo. I don't deserve forgiveness. Her bottom lip trembled. I deserve to be punished. Drew couldn't take it 1 second longer. The woman he loved was in excruciating pain, and he wanted, more than anything, to ease her suffering. He stepped forward and took her into his arms. At first, she resisted mightily, but then she relented and dissolved into him, her head on his shoulder, her torso still heaving with sobs. He stroked her strawberry blonde hair. You think you've got a lock on pain? You think you know everything there is to know about heartache? She lifted her head and looked at him. I have heartache too, he said gently, stroking her hair from her eyes. I was married to someone I thought would be as happy as I was to relocate to this hinterland. When my father started failing, I wanted to honor him by taking over his medical practice. And at first she was okay with it, but after a while, she became bored and angry. Oh. We divorced and she took off for a teaching hospital in Nebraska and has her dream career right now doing research, writing papers, and becoming renowned. Why are you blaming yourself for that? It was my fault for ever thinking she'd enjoy living in Alaska, that she'd embrace the solitude and the peacefulness the way I did. But I made a mistake in asking her to move out here, and because of that, she left me, and it's really all my fault. If you say so, Drew, but she came up here of her own volition. And she could have worked at any of the hospitals in Alaska. I think you're blaming yourself for something that isn't entirely your fault. I feel it is, though, he said. I feel the heartache. He was the cause of his heartache, and she was the cause of hers. They matched each other in misery.